It was a wild week in the NFL in Week 10 Sunday. We'll break it all down. The Lions overcoming 5 Goff interceptions. Steelers come back. Chiefs, Niners hang on. Some bad teams looking better. Chaos ensuing. Let's get into all of it right now on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Appreciate all of our everydayers hanging out with us 5 days a week on Peacock and Williamson. And welcome to all the new listeners. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode all season and in the ensuing off season long here. We're with you every day, all year. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to the prizepicks.com or download the app and use code, all lowercase, Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. That's prizepicks.com/Locked On NFL. All right, we got to start with the Detroit Lions, I think, and what pretty unbelievable timing. I'm not sure if I've ever seen this, but coming out of halftime, I don't know if you saw it, but Dan Campbell does the sideline thing, and they do the delay. So they record the sideline interview before the action starts. I'm pretty sure it's not like actually happening at the time. But he's talking like, what do you got to do to get back into this, Dan Campbell, after your quarterback's thrown a bunch of interceptions and you're down big on the road at the Houston Texans? And he's like, wow, well, first of all, we got to get some turnovers and we got to go make some plays. And while he's saying it, Carlton Davis jumps a pass from CJ Stroud and picks it off. And there you go. They're on the comeback trail. And so, first of all, the Lions have to, Matt, coming back to win this game, 26-23, a couple of late field goals from Jake Bates, including the game winner. If you are the Detroit Lions and Jared Goff, and look, not all necessarily his fault on his 5 interceptions, but your quarterback throws 5 interceptions and you win a game against a pretty good team on the road after you're down 23 points in the first half, or the other team has 23 points and you have 7 going into halftime, and you win the game. I don't know how your confidence can't be through the roof if you're the Lions that you can come back and win through any kind of adversity for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think people know me well enough. I'm not a huge overreact on Monday type of guy. You know, I'm trying to stay pretty level-headed with this thing. But watching these 2 games, doesn't it just feel like the Chiefs and Lions are inevitable? You know, like no matter what happens, they're going to find a way to win. And before you know it, we're going to have a Lions-Chiefs Super Bowl. I mean, it just feels that way in the middle of November right now. Now, I do want to say I definitely feel better about Houston than I did before the game. I mean, I thought that they corrected some things. Maybe they were Nico Collins away from putting the Lions away. They started strong. But, man, I mean, you got to give the Lions credit, and it starts with coaching and leadership and, you know, the fact that they would, like, invest in Penei Sewell, Jared Goff, St. Brown, all these guys they gave contracts as, like, big-time leaders, focal points. It's just such a good message to give the team, and it's paying off on the field, too.
And if you're the Texans, the only thing you can't do in the second half with a good team when you're winning 23-7 is throw a couple interceptions and not at all be able to run the ball. And those exact things are what happened in the second half. Like, you already know, and it's funny. That's why it was funny that Dan Campbell said it, because Dan Campbell knows too. Like, we need help here. That you don't just come back again in the NFL this many points. You need help, and this is what has to happen. And those things happen. So the Texans need to look at themselves in the mirror and be like, well, we can't throw interceptions here. And if you don't want to throw interceptions, well, you got to be able to run the ball with the lead. And Joe Mixon carried the ball 25 times for 46 yards in this game, 1.8 yards per carry. They couldn't close out the Lions, and that's going to be a problem. And even the Lions on the other side weren't able to really run the ball great, but they were able to make enough plays on the ground. The the Texans couldn't make any plays on the ground. They tried to, run the ball with Tank Dell. He loses 6 yards. They just could not run the football. And it's hard to hold on to a victory against a good team if you can't do that. And then you turn the ball over a couple times on top of it, and then it nearly becomes impossible. And Carlton Davis, by the way, with both of those picks, I mean, he's player of the game right now.
It's a great point. I mean, their running game has been a problem for years now, to be honest with you. And really this year, Mixon looked like he solved it. When he was out, it was horrible. When he was in, it was good enough. And I know everyone has injuries, but in terms of closing teams out, I mentioned the Nico injury. Will Anderson would have been helpful too, You get those guys back at least.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so the Texans are fine. They're going to be a good team. They're going to go win the division. But there's some things they still have to clean up. And maybe that
division stinks, by the way.
Have to, be something that's fixed in the offseason into next year. But you still the Texans are. But man, the Lions, how can you not be excited about where you're at for the Detroit Lions with a big comeback win like that? And at this point, you mentioned the Chiefs. Let's go to them next. The Chiefs beat Broncos 16-14. And at this point, I think that the Chiefs are just trolling us. They're like, watch this. Under the division rival Broncos. And so the Broncos fall to 5-5. I thought they had this, and I was shocked to go back and see what happened here. As those of you can tell that are watching this on YouTube, it's my wife's birthday weekend, and we were kind of away. So I had to play some catch up on some of these games. We were out wine tasting on Sunday a little bit. And this was one of those where I was like, oh, man, okay, Broncos are going to knock off the Chiefs, aren't they? Wow, okay, good on the Broncos. And you come back and you're like, oh, come on, what happened here? And so Chiefs 9-0. And are they just trolling us, man?
Sure feels that way, or they made a deal with the devil or something. I mean, to block a kick, a chip shot field goal that would have made you 8-1, it's really something. And Mahomes was under a lot of pressure in this game. I sort of like Houston, but to a lesser degree. I feel better about Denver now than I did then. I think Bo Nix is coming along well. Estime looks like he's starting to take over this backfield that's been pretty uninspiring. But the Chiefs couldn't run the ball, but they still possessed the ball and still had the 33 minutes of time of possession, despite only rushing for 57 yards all day. So it's a lot of Mahomes is reinventing himself yet again. I mean, it's just, I always talk about success rate with them. If it's 3rd and 6, they get 7. It's just all the time. There's not a lot of splash, but they're always moving the football. They always have control. It's pretty impressive. Very impressive.
We talk about the chaotic nature of the NFL. I talk about it all the time, and I talked about it in the intro. And the Chiefs and Lions coming back really helped this not be maybe the most insane week of the NFL season, with some of the bad teams that were able to win and some underdogs that really made things close and some underdogs that did win. And how about the Carolina Panthers? Are they no longer not the worst team in the league? They don't have the worst record in the league. 3-7 now. The Carolina Panthers in Munich win 2017 over the New York Giants. Daniel Jones was awful in this game. Chuba Hubbard just got a new contract, and he was the offense for the Carolina Panthers, rushing for 153 yards. A late Tyrone Tracy fumble really killed the Giants' opportunity at the end, and an overtime win for the Carolina Panthers, and probably about as fun of a game as you could have with these two teams for those fans in Germany. So I'm glad they got to have a good matchup here with these two teams. And we just saw the team that the Panthers beat, their coaches get fired. Are we going to see it again?
I'm glad you mentioned the Tracy fumble. I felt so bad for him because he's a real easy guy to root for.
He's been a great story this year.
He has. Yeah. And Jones is horrendous, and their offensive line's kind of falling apart. But I think you're right. I mean, two bad teams play. Somebody has to win, and these are definitely two bad teams. But the Panthers, I'm not even going to say optimism yet, but at least the second half of the season, the second Bryce Young era, needs to show us something. And it is. So I'll take it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Building blocks. You found a player that you want to sign and keep around in the building, in Chuba Hubbard, and he makes good in this game.
It was great.
Your quarterback's not quite as bad as maybe he started out in his career. Maybe sitting earlier this year helped him a little bit. He's still not amazing, but he was better than the guy on the other side. And this is a broken record. This is my shocked face with the New York Giants. It's like, this is the team you built. What are we doing over there? And so I would fault, and I don't know if it's ownership or GM or whatever, but I don't know why you thought it was going to be different with Daniel Jones, and then Drew Lock is not like any sort of an answer that you brought in either to push him. Like they could have spent a day 3 pick and brought in any of the, young failed quarterbacks and just see what you get instead of locking yourself into what you already knew, what you already should have known you had. Like quarterback
locking yourself. I see what you did.
Yeah. There, I didn't even do that on purpose, but there you go. But so, yeah, just things are bad with the Giants. And honestly, I don't like calling for people's jobs, and these guys have families and all this stuff, but it's the nature of the business. And it's like I don't know why you'd be confident in who's building this team. And to be honest with you, I don't know if Daboll's a good coach or not, because I don't know if he's had a great opportunity.
Right. I blame the GM more than Daboll, but I do think Daboll's a great offensive coordinator. I don't know if he's a good head coach or not.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Two things. I mean, I think that there's going to be some really warm seats. And it wouldn't shock me. I don't think it'll be New York, but Chicago, Jacksonville. Might we get news when we stop recording that there's a coaching change? Like, I think there's going to be a lot of upheaval this offseason, to say the least. And last nugget, you mentioned Chuba. I meant to say this whenever they signed him. I heard someone just say it pretty briefly, like, who else are they going to give the money to? You know what I mean? Like, you might as well reward the couple things that are good in your building,
Yeah, the things you want to build on inside your building that you like. And Jonathan Brooks not ready yet. He was still out in this game. Mm-hmm. Build the culture first. That's where you have to start for the Panthers. So, yeah, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, even if it's a running back.
Really, the only problem I have is if just the money spent on just the total resources just to find a decent running back, because you traded up for Brooks too. And so that was 3 draft picks spent, and then the money on Miles Sanders. You take the Sanders thing out and already it looks better. And then it's like, okay, but pay the guys that are building the right culture in your locker room for sure. Next, let's talk about some of those other games. Patriots, 3 wins now, beating the Bears. And I think Coach Watch is definitely on for the Jacksonville Jaguars as well, who had an opportunity to beat Sam Darnold's Vikings too, and just cannot do it. All that and more coming up from Week 10 of NFL Sunday next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, and all those agonizing overtimes as well, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made for fans like you, the super fans out there, the fans who are the first in the parking lot and who are the last to leave. We see you. Whether it's a comeback win for your team, overcoming 5 interceptions, maybe it's overtime all the way across the world. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy, whether you're prepping for that big tailgate or ironing your jersey or finishing that all-day game day to-do list that could be a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. The next segment of this P&W episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the place. It's the best place to get real money sports action. And you can join over 10 million users when you sign up today. Prize Picks invented, by the way, the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And how easy is it to play DFS with Prize Picks? All you do is you pick 2 or more players and you pick more than or less than on those stat projections at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. And Prize Picks puts their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So if you think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week, or Lamar Jackson will pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns, there you go. And cook up some hot takes there, more than or less than, with your friends and win some real money. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. The New England Patriots defeat the Chicago Bears. And this could be like the coach's hot seat portion of our of our podcast here, but 19-3. This is a Patriots team that has had a tough time stopping opposing defenses with their offensive line, a really tough time stopping teams' offenses with their defense. And I've called it the soft tank, right? You're trying to develop your quarterback, but you're also trying to not win too many games at the same time. That's the mode the Patriots are in. They accidentally went to Chicago and went to their house in Chicago and beat the Bears. And the Bears, who suddenly were like, we're in this thing in the NFC North, are now looking way up at the Lions and the Packers and the Vikings and are now at 4-5. But Matt, and we can talk about this game, but one thing you cannot do, I think, if you're the Bears, is repeat history again and fire a coaching staff after drafting a quarterback high. And they've done it twice in a row with Trubisky and Fields. You can't do it again with Caleb Williams, right? Even though, like, I don't know if I'm super impressed or super confident in this current staff with Chicago Bears.
I think I could argue on that one. I mean, we mentioned, the hot seat. I keep throwing out Jacksonville and Chicago. And I know Minnesota is a much better team than the Patriots, but those two games to me were about the bad teams, the Bears and the Jags being terrible right now and being dysfunctional. And Caleb Williams was sacked 9 times. I mean, he got the crap beat out of him against an okay defense, but not great. It's like they've never picked up a blitz before in their life. And I understand what you're saying. Like, how often are we going to draft someone high, give them 1 year with one staff, fire them, Trubisky, Fields, et cetera, et cetera. But this group seems utterly incompetent.
They're getting worse, which you don't like.
Much.
And yeah, that's one of the big things. Like, you've never seen. And actually, the Patriots were like this earlier this year. And that's why I was like, oh, maybe you can't put Drake May in there, because they acted like they'd never seen a blitz before. They couldn't pick up anything. They couldn't block. It was like, what are you doing? Now all of a sudden it's flipped, and now it's the Chicago Bears that look like that. And it's usually a bad sign when a team's getting worse. It's a rookie quarterback, and sometimes those sacks are on the quarterback as much as they're on the offense or the offensive line. But yeah, something's not adding up for the Bears, and they've looked like one of the worst teams in the league the last few weeks after they're riding high when they collected their 4th win. So I don't think the hot seat is
kid. I mean, it's bad. Yeah.
But
there's an offensive coordinator change like tomorrow.
Same old story for the Chicago Bears. It's got to be frustrating for Bears fans. Like, okay, new quarterback. Are we ruining the young quarterback? Are we going to have another coaching staff? We got to fire the OC at least. And it's like, well, how many OCs can Matt Eberflus outlast? If you keep doing that, you got to start pointing at the top guy too.
Yeah, 100%.
I get where you're at on that. But the one that I did expect to wake up this morning and see that Doug Peterson was fired. Jacksonville Jaguars get an early lead, but fall to the Minnesota Vikings after Sam Darnold throws 3 interceptions. There's multiple storylines here. One is that the Jaguars are so bad. 2-8 now, obviously without Trevor Lawrence. So you can't blame Trevor Lawrence in this game. Mac Jones got the start for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But the waking up this morning, instead of seeing that Doug Peterson got fired, and I think he's number 1 on the coach's hot seat list right now, Matt. The thing I saw was Vikings fans going, well, hey, that JJ McCarthy era might be pretty fun here. So I guess they've jumped off the Sam Darnold bandwagon. Vikings fans were talking about him being the MVP of the league early in the season. They get out with a win here, 7-2 Vikings, 12-7. That's an ugly score. 12-7 win for the Vikings over the Jacksonville Jaguars. And those Vikings fans now looking forward still to the JJ McCarthy era, however this season ends.
No question. I get that. And I do think it's time that, maybe some of the shine is off of Darnold. People are starting to figure out that he has some of his same old habits, doesn't deal with pressure particularly well, at all, really well, to be honest with you. And, I think we joked, I can't picture the purple uniforms being in Jacksonville, like when we were previewing this game or whatever. And sort of a business trip for the Vikings. It wasn't their best day. They still got out of there with a win. Hawkinson looked really good. I mean, I think he's back. That's big. But everyone's talking about Darnold's interceptions, and that's noteworthy, no question. But the Jags turned the ball over 3 times too. I mean, the turnover differential was 3-3. And they didn't even have 18 minutes of time of possession. Like, you don't even see that in this league. They had 17-something in time of possession. I mean, it's horrendous.
Yeah, and we talked about that Texans-Lions game. How do you lose a game where the other guy throws 3 interceptions? Well, you throw a couple of your own. You give the ball back to him.
Right, exactly.
That's how you lose a game like that. And yeah, Mac Jones did not look good, so clearly it's not a Trevor Lawrence thing in Jacksonville. Even if you feel a certain way about Trevor Lawrence, maybe he's not the second coming as people thought he was coming into the league. But they got more problems there in Jacksonville. And by the way, so yeah, talking about the uniforms. I thought it was a college game at first because Jacksonville was wearing their alternate white helmets on top of everything else. So it was like Vikings, Jaguars, something you're not used to seeing. And then Jacksonville had this alternate uniform going on. It's like, I don't know. Is this like USF against, I don't even know what team wears purple, but it was just a weird looking game and an ugly game. So I hope a lot of our listeners didn't spend 3 hours of their Sunday watching that one.
That's a tough one.
How about your Pittsburgh Steelers? Matt,
good game.
Let's actually, I want to save a little bit of time for that one. So let's get into the Steelers next, who came back to beat the Washington Commanders. We've got numerous games to cover here quickly and get through the rest of Week 10. I want to go first though to the Buffalo Bills. Handled their business against the Colts. 8-2 now. The Buffalo Bills 30-20 win over the 4-6 now Indianapolis Colts. I don't think there's a ton of takeaways here. Jonathan Taylor running the ball well, but that's just not going to be enough for the Colts when the Bills are playing well. The Bills are in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to that one. Is again, the better team won. I think they'd win more often than not. I think the Richardson talk is going to start heating up here a little bit. Flacco's not the answer or a difference maker. Buffalo's really good. I don't see a lot of weaknesses with the Bills, even when some of their receivers were a little short.
Yeah, they're the better team, went to somebody else's house, and they didn't do the thing where they had to come back and win like the Chiefs and the Lions did. So you like seeing that if you are the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Bills fans out there. And yeah, Anthony Richardson, you have to do the Anthony Richardson thing the rest of the year if you're the Colts.
I think so.
You have to. You're 2 games under 500. You don't have to pretend that you're in it anymore either if you're the Colts. So that makes everything a lot easier, and you're not winning games with Flacco anyway.
And like Bryce Young, maybe it's a lot better now. Who knows?
Right. Yeah. Maybe that just, a little reset, watch for a little bit and continue developing a young quarterback that you already knew was super raw. And then make some more decisions about that in the offseason, but he's got to play. He's got to get out there. And Anthony Richardson, don't take yourself out of the game if you do get in there.
Yeah, we learned that lesson.
Next, let's talk Steelers come back over the Washington Commanders and a whole lot more from Week 10. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curating gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code NFL and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com, OMAHA steaks.com, and an extra $30 off with promo code NFL. Minimum purchase may apply. In the final segment of today's episode of Peacock and Williamson, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. So whether you're watching Monday Night Football or next Sunday's NFL action, live in-game betting, tons of weekly NFL props, year-long bets, who's the next coach to get fired, who's going to win Coach of the Year. You can find all of it, plus NBA, NHL, and every sport imaginable at FanDuel. And all you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today, or download the app, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Pittsburgh Steelers winners, and some late heroics from Russell Wilson finding the new guy for a touchdown in the fourth quarter. 28-27 is a good one. The 7-2 Steelers go to Washington and defeat the now 7-3 Commanders.
Yeah, this was a fun game. I mean, there was probably 7 to 10 really pivotal, crucial, huge plays that were true game of inches stuff. I mean, even like the spotting of the ball on basically the last play of the game came down to an inch. And the Steelers in the end made a couple more than the Commanders did on those pivotal plays. They also had a really good game plan the Lamar game plan. They kept Daniels in the pocket, forced him to hand it off on all the zone read stuff. He ended up with 5 rushing yards, and they varied their coverages a lot more than they have. They controlled the line of scrimmage with their really good D-line. But the Commanders played well, too. McLaurin might have been the best player on the field. He was awesome. Daniels made some really tight window throws. They rushed the passer well. But you mentioned it. I mean, the Steelers have an offense. It, like, makes me smile. It's been 5 years since the Steelers have had an offense. Like, Ben's last year wasn't even an offense. I mean, like, 2 years before that is when they actually had an offense. But pre-Duck Hodges.
Well, yeah.
So,
how many Steelers games in the last few years have you been like, okay, we've got to score 4 touchdowns on offense to win this game?
Can't do it, right? Or you turn the ball over once, the game's over. You know what I mean? That's how it's been for half a decade now. And it's not like that anymore. Wilson's playing well, and I got a kick out of it. They interviewed Mike Williams after the game. They're like, "Oh, you then a stutter go there. Is that one of the few routes, you've been running in practice with Wilson?" He's like, "No, I've never ran it once. He just told me to run a stutter go." And then it's like drawing it up in the sand,
Right. And that was his one catch of the game, 32-yard touchdown, game winner. George Pickens breakout, maybe.
Ridiculous catch for him again, too. And,
another one. I mean, his body control is insane. There's more to his game. That's why I drafted him in my fantasy teams. And it's like,
hold on to him.
Do a little more. And I think if you have like an X guy on the other side to do some of the just straight downfield stuff, I think he can get open underneath and gives you a little after the catch. We saw that in this game too. So he's not just let's chuck it up and let him see if he can make a big play and moss somebody. There's more to his game. He's also a little bit of a weirdo. So if you can rein that all in and bring it all together, there's more there with George Pickens, man. He's talented.
He's a typical Steeler wideout. He's a weirdo with some issues that's super talented, and they get a lot out of him,
Exactly.
Get him in the second round instead of the first.
Exactly. Steelers in a great spot. Commanders still in a really good spot. Both those teams have 7 wins right now. Let's move on to teams.
Real quick, we'll talk about this, but the Steelers host the Ravens. The Commanders go to Philly on Thursday night. So those divisions are about to get really shaken up.
Yeah, and I was just going to talk about that division with the Eagles and the Cowboys, and the Eagles are pretty good, and the Cowboys are pretty awful. Cowboys fall to 3-6.
Talk about a hot seat.
Eagles 7-2, 34-6 win. Put the Cowboys to bed. This is going to be fun with the Eagles and Commanders down the stretch, though, in the NFC East.
Cooper Rush played most of this game. He threw for 45 yards. I mean, on 23 attempts. I mean, it's horrible. They're a disaster at this point. I wonder if they give Lance a try, but I don't think he looks particularly great either. I really don't have much more to add to this game, except it was as lopsided as the score looks. I mean, Kenny Pickett's in there cleaning up. I mean, it's one of those kind of games.
Right, yeah. It's not a good sign for the Cowboys when Kenny Pickett's in the game for you there. And yeah, we may see Trey Lance there for the Dallas Cowboys at some point. You might as well just see what you get, see what you got. And, the Arizona Cardinals don't look now red hot. And they defeat the Jets, Jets were flying high and had some extra time after last week's heroics in the game winner with Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams. And they could muster 2 field goals in this game, could the Jets on offense against the Cardinals defense, which is supposed to be the weak point of that team. The Cardinals coaching staff is really good. The offense, I like what's going on there. And they walloped the Jets 31-6. This was not a close football game from start to finish, man.
Not at all. I thought Rodgers was really terrible. Just to rewind a second, we said this a lot going into Commander Steelers, that whoever wins that, I think, has a really strong Coach of the Year case. But I think Arizona does as well. And we've been a lot of coaching stuff on this Monday. Is Jets are going to have a new one. There's maybe 8 teams out there that look really bad off at the coaching position that could get dumped. And Arizona's not one of them. I mean, that is maybe the biggest strength of the team.
The San Francisco 49ers, I called it escaped with a win. against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They missed 3 field goals, but hit 3 more field goals. And it's kind of what's going on with the Niners offense this year is they've kind of been a team that stalls out in the red zone. Getting Christian McCaffrey back did help the 49ers in some ways, but they weren't really able to run the ball much on the ground. I thought it was a good game plan from both sides of the football coaching staffs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is a reason they've still been able to hang on and go toe to toe with teams like the 49ers this week and the Chiefs last week, taking the Chiefs to overtime. But they're just undermanned are the Bucs. And in the end, the 49ers were able to kick and make a game-winning field goal even after Deebo Samuel was like trying to fight the kicker after the third miss earlier on the sideline, which is like, oh my God, that's not good. But the 49ers do escape with a win, 23-20 over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Niners and Cards battling out at the top of the West over there, and 5-4 Niners, 4-6 Buccaneers. The Bucs, valiant efforts. And I've been impressed with Baker Mayfield and the toughness and their ability to fight. They're just undermanned. Then they have, a backup left tackle coming in trying to block Nick Bosa in this game. It's like they just can't stay healthy. They're a shell of themselves, and they're still competitive. So good on the Bucs for that. But I just can't see how that's going to continue right now in Tampa.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned. I mean, Tristan Wirfs' injury could be massive. Hopefully, that's not huge because that's one of the real strengths of this team is the O-line have kept their head above water while they've been short on weapons. People know that I count a missed field goal exactly the same as a turnover. Hard to overcome those things on the road against a quality opponent. But you're right. I mean, they escaped. Purdy put up numbers. Mayfield didn't. Statistically,
one of the best games of Purdy's career. It's the first time he's ever had 350 passing yards and 0 turnovers. So
he's elevating people.
Yeah, and 5 different receivers had 50 receiving yards. So it's a little Kittle here, a toe tap touchdown from Kittle, some Debo, some Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield, some Jawan Jennings, who's one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL. Ricky Pearsall, a rookie first rounder, gets his first NFL touchdown after getting shot in the chest a couple months ago. So still a lot of weapons and Purdy really spreading the ball around in Kyle Shanahan's offense in this game. And, if it wasn't for a couple of stalled out drives and some missed field goals, it probably shouldn't have been this close. And so the 49ers handle their business, and still some things to clean up for the Niners, though, to be that team that I think everyone expects, or they at least expect themselves to be.
It seemed to me like a knock the rust off game for McCaffrey too.
Yeah, and I thought he was moving around just fine. I thought it was clearly a game plan from the Bucs to be like, all right, we're going to stop the run, and that's usually most of the team's game plans against the 49ers, and there's too much weaponry out there, and Brock Purdy was up to the challenge there, and even if the kicker wasn't for part of the game, but ended up hitting the game winner, did Jake Moody. Don't draft third-round kickers, guys.
I'd rather draft running backs than kickers.
All right. We're not going to get to every game this week, but those are the big ones. Do you have any last thoughts on any of these games that we have to get to?
No, I think the only 2 we didn't touch on are Saints pulled off the upset over the Falcons, and maybe they're okay. I mean, they got Carr, and they're maybe a little bit of a bump with the coaching change. I don't know, but I honestly didn't watch a ton of that one. And the Titans got up early on the Chargers. Ridley's getting a ton of action. But that game went as expected to. The Chargers just kind of shut the door on them and were the better team. Herbert was awesome in that game. So not a lot of notes on those 2. But
Jim Harbaugh can coach a football team. Chargers just kind of like leaned on them. They're like, we're bigger, tougher. We're a little better than you. We're going to play our game, and eventually we're going to overtake you and win. And it's sort of like a battle of attrition there. The Art of War. I'm sure Jim Harbaugh's read that book. You know what I mean? Sun Tzu, that was the kind of game it was for the Chargers there. 27-17 win. And I don't know if there's a lot to take away from the Saints beating the Falcons, their division opponents. It was at the Saints' house, 20-17. Does it show some weaknesses in the Falcons at the top of that division? First win since week 2 for the Saints. It's hard for me to have many takeaways in that one. I think it's just division opponents play each other tough. We'll see if those trends continue for those 2 teams, though.
Yeah, and I think the Falcons, despite this loss, and especially the Chargers, look like playoff teams, the way things are shaping out.
By the way, Bijan, a pair of touchdown runs, 116 yards on the ground there for the Falcons. So fantasy owners were happy, even if Falcons fans weren't.
MVS is going to be the hot waiver wire pickup for the Saints. Not by me, but.
Yeah. Hot. Lukewarm.
Lukewarm.
All right.
Yeah.
There we go. That's Week 10 Sunday around the NFL. Get those mailbag questions to Matt and I later this week. Maybe we'll have some news about some coaches getting fired. I have a feeling we might get one this week. Not rooting for it, but such is, Week 10 NFL when you see some of the games we saw this week, and we'll have all the league broken down for you with all the news as we do every day here. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.